The forest at the edge of Blackthorn territory was a place people avoided. Wolves who lived there whispered that it was cursed, that bad luck grew between its trees like moss. Only one person walked through it without fear, and that was Lyra Ashworth. She had lived near that forest her whole life, in a small wooden house that leaned slightly to one side. Her grandmother had built it long ago, and Lyra had never left. The villagers of Blackthorn kept their distance from her. Mothers pulled their children away when she passed. Shopkeepers took her coins quickly and said nothing more than necessary. It was not because Lyra had done anything wrong, it was because of the mark on her wrist. The mark was shaped like a small silver leaf, pale against her skin, and it had been there since birth. The pack healers called it a curse brand. They said it meant misfortune followed her, that she brought bad luck to anyone who got too close. Lyra did not believe this, but she had stopped arguing about it years ago. Instead, she wore long sleeves, kept to herself, and spent her days gathering rare herbs from the forest that no one else dared enter. She sold what she could at the edge of the market, just enough to live simply. She did not know that her quiet life was about to change. Far away, in the great stone hall at the center of Blackthorn, Alpha King Cale Draven lay in his bed, unable to rise. 6 months ago, a rival pack had attacked during a supposed peace meeting. Cale had survived the fight, but not without cost. A blade coated in black wolfsbane poison had cut his side, and the poison had settled deep into his blood. It was not an ordinary poison. It was made with old magic, the kind that resisted every remedy the pack healers tried. At first, Cale had been strong enough to fight it. He continued to rule, continued to train his warriors, continued to appear strong in front of his people. But as the months passed, the poison spread. His wolf, once the fiercest and proudest in the 5 territories, grew quiet inside him. Some days, Cale could not feel his wolf at all. This frightened him more than the poison itself. An alpha without his wolf was only half a leader. The healers tried everything. Herbs, potions, ancient chants passed down through generations. Nothing worked. One by one, they came to Cale with lowered eyes and said the same thing. They had no more ideas. His council began to speak quietly about succession, about who might lead Blackthorn if their king did not recover. Cale heard these whispers even though no one said them to his face. He hated the sound of them. His most trusted friend and second in command, Ren, refused to give up. Ren had grown up alongside Cale, had fought beside him in every battle, and could not accept that his king would simply fade away. He began asking questions in places others did not think to look. He spoke with old villagers, with traveling merchants, with anyone who might know of a healer whose skills went beyond the ordinary. It was an elderly merchant woman who finally mentioned the girl at the edge of the forest. She said the girl knew about plants and remedies that no one else understood, passed down from her grandmother, who had once been a healer herself many years ago. She also mentioned, in a lower voice, that the girl carried a strange mark, and that people whispered she was cursed. Ren did not care about curses. He cared about saving his king. He rode to the forest's edge and found Lyra kneeling among some plants, carefully cutting stems with a small knife. She looked up at him with quiet caution, the way she looked at everyone from Blackthorn. "I need your help," Ren said simply. "Our alpha is dying. Every healer we have has failed. I was told you might know something they don't." Lyra studied him for a long moment. She could have said no. She owed nothing to a pack that had shunned her for so long. But there was something in the way Ren spoke, an honesty in his tired eyes, that made her set down her knife. "I can try," she said. "I make no promises." When Cale first saw her enter his chamber, he almost refused her help outright. Pack law had always treated her kind as bad omens, and pride told him it would be shameful to accept aid from someone his people scorned. But his fever had grown worse that very morning, and his wolf had not answered him in 3 days. He was out of options, and he knew it. "Do what you must," he said through gritted teeth. Quickly, Lyra approached his bedside without fear, which surprised everyone in the room. She examined the wound on his side, now dark and swollen, despite weeks of treatment. She asked him questions about how the poison had entered his body, what symptoms had come first, how his wolf had responded in the early days. She listened carefully to every answer. She tried remedies made from herbs she had gathered in the forest, mixtures her grandmother had taught her long ago. The first attempt did nothing. The second slowed the fever slightly. But the poison remained. Kale grew weaker. His breathing became shallow. Lyra sat beside his bed that night thinking. She remembered something her grandmother had told her once, in a quiet voice, many years before she passed away. Her grandmother had said that in her own blood ran something rare, something tied to old healing magic that could not be explained by ordinary herbs. She had warned Lyra never to reveal this to anyone who wore a crown. At the time, Lyra had not understood the warning. Now, faced with a dying king and no other options, she considered it seriously. She made her decision before dawn. She drew a small amount of her own blood and mixed it carefully into a remedy, then brought it to Kale's healers to give to him. The results came quickly. By morning, his fever had broken. By the next day, the swelling around his wound had begun to fade, and on the third day, Kale felt something he had almost forgotten, a small stirring deep inside him. His wolf, silent for so long, had begun to wake. The healers were amazed. No one understood what Lyra had done differently, only that it had worked where everything else had failed. Kale, still weak but improving, demanded answers from her directly. "What did you give me?" he asked. "What are you?" Lyra hesitated, then told him the truth, as much as she understood it herself. She spoke of the mark on her wrist, of her grandmother's warning, of the strange healing properties in her blood that she had never fully understood. She did not know why it worked. She only knew that it did. Kale listened closely. As his strength slowly returned over the following days, so did fragments of memory that seemed to come from his wolf, rather than his own mind. He began to recall old stories, half forgotten, about a pact made generations ago between Blackthorn's first alpha and a line of healers with rare gifts. He remembered pieces of pack history that spoke of an exile, a healer bloodline sent away for reasons the old records never fully explained. Kale began to suspect that Lyra was not cursed at all. She was descended from healers his own ancestors had once turned away. He kept her close after that, insisting she continue his treatments personally, rather than through the pack healers. At first, this was simply practical. Her remedies worked, and he did not want to risk losing progress. But as the days passed, something else grew between them. They spoke during his treatments, at first only about herbs and remedies, then slowly about other things. Kale found himself curious about her quiet life at the forest's edge. Lyra found herself surprised by his humility, so different from the proud, distant king she had expected. His council did not approve. Several members spoke against her presence in the stone hall, repeating old fears about her mark, insisting she be sent away once Kale's health was fully restored. Kale, to his own surprise, found himself defending her. He silenced anyone who spoke against her in his presence, and slowly, his warriors began to follow his lead. If their alpha did not fear her, why should they? Lyra, who had spent her whole life being pushed aside, began to feel something she had never felt before. She began to feel like she belonged somewhere. But the danger was not over. The rival pack that had poisoned Kale soon learned that their plan had failed. Word reached them that the Alpha King was recovering and that a girl from the forest's edge was responsible. They could not allow this. If Kale fully recovered, their advantage would disappear. They decided to send warriors to finish what the poison had started and to eliminate the girl who had reversed it. They struck at night, slipping past the outer guards through a hidden path in the forest that only a few knew existed. Kale, still not at full strength, was resting when the attack began. Alarms rang through the stone hall. Ren rushed to defend the king's chamber, but the attackers had already gotten close. Lyra, who had been staying nearby to continue Kale's treatments, heard the commotion and ran toward his room instead of away from it. She found him trying to rise from his bed, weaker than he wanted to admit, facing an attacker who had broken through the door. Without thinking, Lyra placed herself between Kale and the attacker. In that moment, the mark on her wrist began to glow, a soft silver light spreading up her arm. She did not understand what was happening, only that a strength she had never felt before rushed through her. The attacker, startled by the sudden light, hesitated just long enough for Ren and the other warriors to arrive and stop him. The danger passed, but the effort had drained Lyra completely. She collapsed, exhausted, her strength spent from whatever power had woken inside her. Kale, though still recovering himself, refused to let anyone else carry her. He lifted her himself and brought her to a quiet room, insisting the best healers care for her immediately. He stayed by her side as she rested, thinking about everything that had happened, about the old pact his ancestors had broken, about the bloodline his pack had wrongly exiled. When Lyra finally woke, she found Kale sitting beside her, looking healthier than she had ever seen him. His eyes were clear, his wolf finally steady within him again. "You saved my life twice now," he said quietly. "Once with your remedies, and once with whatever power lives in you." Lyra managed a small, tired smile. "I still don't fully understand it myself." "Then we will learn together," Kale said. In the days that followed, Kale stood before his full council and spoke plainly. He told them of the old pact between Blackthorn's first alpha and the healer bloodline that had once served the pack faithfully, before fear and misunderstanding led to their exile. He told them that the mark once called a curse was, in truth, a sign of rare and powerful healing magic, one that had just saved their king's life not once, but twice. He reversed the old law that had branded Lyra's bloodline as bad omens. He named her Blackthorn's true healer, a position of honor rather than shame. And though some council members still hesitated, none dared argue against the alpha whose life she had saved in front of them all. Word spread quickly through Blackthorn. The villagers who once looked away from Lyra now looked at her differently. Children who had been warned to avoid her now watched her with quiet curiosity instead of fear. The mark on her wrist, once hidden beneath long sleeves, she now wore without shame. Kale made one more announcement before his council that day, one that surprised no one who had watched the two of them together over the past weeks. He named Lyra not only as Blackthorn's healer, but as the woman he intended to make his mate, if she would have him. Lyra, standing before the pack that had once shunned her, looked at the king who had once called her cursed, and now called her something else entirely. She thought of her grandmother's warning, of the years spent alone at the forest's edge, of everything that had led her to this moment. She said yes. That evening, as the sun set over Blackthorn territory, Kale felt his wolf rise fully within him, for the first time in over half a year, stronger than it had ever been before. Beside him stood Lyra, her mark no longer hidden, no longer feared, but honored as the very thing that had saved them both. The pack that had once cast her aside now owed its king's life to her, and the girl once called cursed had finally found the place where she belonged.